Somewhere between your phone and the website it is talking to, there is a single number that everything online treats as your address, your return label, the place every reply gets sent back to. It feels personal, almost like a home. It is not. On most mobile networks now, and on a growing share of home connections too, that number is not yours at all. It belongs to the carrier, and behind it, sharing the very same number at the very same moment, are hundreds or even thousands of other people you will never meet. You are all crowded onto one line, all wearing the same name, and the machinery that tries to judge you by that name often has no idea which of you is which. This is the story of how the internet quietly ran out of names and started handing the same one to a crowd. The shortage. To understand why, you have to go back to a decision made decades ago, when the internet was young and the people building it could not imagine how big it would get. Every device that talks directly on the network needs an address, and the original system for those addresses had room for only about 4 billion of them. At the time, that sounded like a number no one could ever exhaust. Then came the phones. Then the laptops, the tablets, the watches, the doorbells, the cars, the thermostats, billions upon billions of devices, each one wanting to speak. The pool of original addresses was drained years ago, handed out down to the very last one. And yet the number of things demanding an address kept climbing, and still climbs today. The carriers were left with a simple, brutal arithmetic problem: far more customers than addresses, and no more addresses anywhere to be had. The old promise, the internet, was built on a quiet assumption that now had to break. For a long time, the deal was roughly this: you connect, the network hands you your own public address, and for as long as you are online, that address is yours alone. It was a bit like a phone number in the old sense: one line, one household, a number that pointed at you and nobody else. An enormous amount of how the internet works, and especially how it decides who to trust, was built on top of that assumption. The address was treated as a stand-in for a person or a place. Block the address, and you block the troublemaker. Recognize the address, and you recognize the returning customer. It was never perfectly true, but it was true enough to lean on, and lean on it we did, for decades. And then the addresses ran out, and it stopped being true at all. The shared door. So the carriers reached for a technique that had quietly been holding the internet together for years, and they scaled it up to an industrial size. The idea is called network address translation, and carrier grade simply means doing it for an entire network of subscribers at once. Picture a single public address as one door onto the wider internet, and behind that door, a private network where thousands of customers each get their own private address, an internal number that means nothing to the outside world. When any of them wants to reach a website, their traffic is routed through a shared gateway that swaps their private address for the one public address everyone behind the door is using. To the website on the far side, it all appears to come from that single shared address. The crowd behind the door is invisible. Only the door is ever seen. Now, translation. The clever part, the part that makes it work at all, is how the gateway keeps everyone's conversations from tangling together. When your traffic goes out through that shared door, the gateway writes down a little note to itself, a record that says this particular connection on this particular channel belongs to you and not to the thousands of others using the same address right now. When the reply comes back addressed to the shared public number, the gateway checks its notes, sees which private customer that specific channel was promised to, and quietly routes the answer back to you, and only you. It is doing this for enormous numbers of simultaneous conversations, thousands of people all streaming and scrolling and loading at once, every one of them funneled through the one address, each reply threaded back to the right person by nothing more than a careful table of who is using which channel. It works remarkably well. Most people spend their whole lives behind one of these gateways and never notice a thing. One address, thousands of people, but notice what has happened to the number that is supposed to identify you. It is no longer yours. It is a party line, shared in real time with a whole crowd of strangers, all of them appearing to the outside world as the exact same origins. The website you visit sees that public address and, out of old habit, treats it as if it points at one person. It does not. It points at a gateway, and behind that gateway is a churning population of people doing entirely unrelated things. A student here, a grandmother there, someone streaming a film, someone paying a bill, all of them wearing the same borrowed name at the same instant. The address that the whole detection industry was built to read as an identity has quietly become one of the least personal things about you. A coat handed round a crowd, worn by whoever happens to be standing in it. The reputation problem, and here is where it turns from a technical curiosity into something that touches real people. The internet keeps score on addresses. Every address carries a kind of reputation built up from the behavior that has been seen coming from it, and systems everywhere use that reputation to decide how much to trust the next visitor who arrives wearing it. Now put 1,000 strangers behind one shared address and ask what happens when just one of them behaves badly. One person sends spam or hammers a site or tries something abusive, and the reputation of the whole shared address takes the hit. The score drops for everyone at once. And so the grandmother, the student, the person quietly paying their bill, all of them suddenly find that the internet has grown suspicious of them for something they did not do and will never even know about. They start facing endless puzzles to prove they are human, or slow blocks or flat refusals, punished collectively for the sins of a neighbor they cannot see and never chose to stand beside. The broken assumption. Step back and you can see the deeper fault line this exposes. An enormous amount of the machinery that guards the internet still quietly believes that one address equals one person. It is a comfortable assumption, and for a long time it was close enough to work with. Rate limits, block lists, trust scores, so much of it rests on the idea that if you can just identify the address, you have identified the actor behind it. Carrier grade sharing takes that assumption and shatters it silently at massive scale. The address no longer maps to a person. It maps to a crowd, and the crowd is constantly changing, its members drifting in and out from one hour to the next. Any system still treating that shared number as a clean identity is now making decisions on a foundation that quietly dissolved beneath it, blocking innocence and waving through the wrong people, all because it is reading a name that stopped belonging to anyone in particular. Why mobile looks human. This also explains something that puzzles a lot of people who study traffic online. Addresses that belong to mobile carriers are notoriously hard to judge and hard to block wholesale. And this is exactly why. Behind a single mobile address, there really is a crowd, a genuine churning population of ordinary people using their phones. The traffic coming from it looks messy and human because it is messy and human. A real mixture of real behavior from real people all sharing the one number. A website cannot simply ban the address the moment it sees something it dislikes, because banning it means banning a whole town's worth of innocent customers along with the single troublemaker. That property, a real human crowd standing behind every address, is precisely what makes mobile connections look so trustworthy and so ordinary. And precisely because it looks that way, it is also a property that gets deliberately sought after and exploited, and just as deliberately studied and defended against by everyone whose job is to tell the crowd apart, the crowd as cover, and that is the uncomfortable corner of it. The very same crowding that protects the innocent grandmother from being blocked also, unavoidably, offers cover to anyone who would rather not be singled out. If 1,000 people share one address, then any one of them is hard to isolate from the rest, for good reasons and bad alike. This is why the shared, crowded nature of these addresses ends up being fought over so hard from both sides. Those who abuse it lean on the crowd to disappear into it. Those who defend against abuse have to find some way to tell one member of the crowd from another without punishing the whole group for the actions of one. The shared door that keeps a billion ordinary people online is the same shared door that makes the hard problem of accountability genuinely, structurally hard. You cannot have the one without the other, because they are the same door. The defense is, so how do the systems on the far side adapt once they can no longer trust the address to name a person? The honest answer is that they stop leaning on the address so heavily, and they start looking at everything else. Instead of asking only where did this come from, they begin asking what is this visitor actually doing? And does the way it behaves match a real human on a real device? They look at the shape of the behavior, the rhythm of the requests, the countless small signals a genuine person and a genuine device give off, and they weigh the address as just one blurry hint among many, rather than the whole answer. And underneath all of it, slowly, the deeper fix is being laid down. A vastly larger new pool of addresses exists now, big enough that in principle every device on Earth could have its own again, and the internet has been migrating toward it for years. The shortage that forced the crowding onto one number was always meant to be temporary. The trouble is that temporary, on the internet, has a way of lasting a very long time. The double edge, name the tension squarely, because it is a real one and it does not resolve cleanly. Carrier-grade sharing is, on one face, one of the quiet miracles that made the modern mobile internet possible at all. Without it, the addresses would simply have run out, and billions of people who came online in the last decade might never have been handed away on. It stretched a finite, exhausted resource to cover a world that had far outgrown it. And yet, the very same trick that let everyone in also muddies accountability, weakens the whole idea of judging anyone by their address, and quietly hands out collective punishment to innocent people who happen to share a number with someone behaving badly. It shelters the crowd, and it hides the guilty in the very same motion. You cannot keep the one edge and file off the other because it is a single blade. The thing that let billions online is the same thing that made the address stop meaning anything. What it is really about. So here is the part to sit with. Most people picture their address as a kind of home, a fixed point that is theirs, a thing that says here is me and nobody else. But for a great many of us now, that has quietly stopped being true. The number the whole internet still reads as your name is, in truth, a shared line, a code passed around a crowd, a door with 1,000 people behind it. And once you understand that, a great deal of the strangeness of the modern internet starts to make a kind of sense. The sudden distrust, the endless puzzles asking you to prove you are human, the sense of being judged for something you cannot see and did not do. You are being read by systems that still believe an address is a person, in a world where it quietly stopped being one. The name still gets used against you. It just no longer belongs to you alone. And the surprising amount of what happens to you online is the slow fallout of that one unspoken fact. If this is the kind of thing you find yourself thinking about, the quiet machinery under the everyday internet, then this channel is your sort of place. There is no product to sell you here. It is just the systems, taken apart and explained by someone who has spent a long time on the inside of them. Subscribe and follow the rabbit hole. Next time we are going to look at the devices that are not devices, how a website can tell that the phone visiting it is not a phone at all, but a program wearing the costume of one, a piece of software pretending to be a handset while it quietly runs inside a simulated machine on a server in some data center far away, and how the smallest slips in the disguise give the whole illusion away.